I really think poker has taught me a lot of lessons about the ups and downs, not going on tilt when stuff goes bad, not counting your eggs before they hatch when stuff's going well, because it can shift on a dime, and life is a lot like that. Day 101, second day of the video series, I decided that I'm going to talk a little bit about how poker kind of influenced my mindset on just life in general. I've said a lot of times over the course of the past 20 years, poker's a lot like life. It can teach you a lot if you actually pay attention. It's a difficult game, just like life. And I think a lot of things that you learn playing the game, if you apply the same skill set to life, you can really put yourself in a good spot. So, for me, poker started April 5th, 2004. I graduated high school 2003. Obviously, that's the year that Chris Moneymaker would go on to win the main event, and poker would explode. And I had never thought about it, never played. And I remember the date specifically because it was the Georgia Tech Connecticut Championship men's basketball game. And a bug just flew in my mouth. It's real cool when a bug flies in your mouth while you're, talking to the camera. Just makes it that much easier. Anyways, so I remember the date. We had got together at a buddy's house, just playing, real small, like nickel dime games. I ended up winning $5 that day. And from that point on, I was hooked. We played every day that summer. A bunch of my friends were a year behind me in school, so they had graduated. Everybody was working jobs, didn't have no responsibilities. And we were playing, we played some 48-hour shifts. We were all in it. And the summer went real well. And, I made some money thanks to my friends that that played all summer long. But I thought I was hot shit. So everybody goes off to college, and I decided to check out this online poker thing. And after, only having like one or two losing sessions that entire summer, I just got my ass whooped, just handed to me when I got online. And I realized I have no clue what I'm doing. So if I'm going to do this and I'm going to play more, I need to figure it out. So just like anything, studied, we'd play a long poker shift, and, the ones of us that took it really, really seriously would stay after everybody was even done. And we would just run hands to play out different scenarios and figure out what we should do. So, from an early point, I knew like I was going to have to work harder than other people to get the game figured out and put myself into a position to actually make some money playing the game. Unfortunately, turned out poker was very nice to me. I'm not some huge millionaire or anything from playing poker, but it was a good, way for me to make money early on when online was still working. And then, later on in life, it turned into more of a hobby for me. But, I feel like I learned a lot from it. And the reason why I loved it so much was because the average guy could do that. I played baseball growing up, and you can't just go play baseball with professionals and expect to have any success. But in poker, on any given day, it can be your day. And you can play against one of the best players in the world and win on that given day, whether it's luck or you just made the right play at the right time. Now, over a course of time, that's not going to work, unless you're at the same level. But on any given hand, the amateur can win and the pro can go home. And that was a big attraction to me with the competition side of it. I was always a tournament poker player. I love the strategy aspect of it, being the last person left, when it doesn't matter if it's, a single table tournament or a multi-table tournament, to be the last one standing was the thing that really drew me to tournament poker specifically. So, how does this apply to life and everything? Well, a poker tournament, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're the better player or the worst player. On any given hand, the entire tournament can change for you. For example, you can be going along, running well, winning every hand, winning your races, and it takes one hand to erase all the work that you've done in that poker tournament. And then you have to wait until the next poker tournament and start over and try to do it again. On the flip side, everything can be going wrong. And then you are now on a hot streak and everything changes, and you have a chance to put yourself into a position to win when you felt like the world was coming crashing down. And I think every poker player that's ever played a significant amount of poker, I know any player has had that feeling at some point where you're just like, it doesn't matter what I do. Like it doesn't go right. And then other moments where you're like, it doesn't matter what I do, everything goes right. And those stretches can last for quite a while, bad or good. So, to kind of illustrate that, my 2014 was the first time that I'd ever went out and taken a shot at any World Series of Poker events. It was I'd been playing for 10 years, and I had just never, taken the shot. I never went out there. I had been out there for business in 2009 and had a booth during the main event at the Gaming Life Expo, but I had never went out and played the event. So, put a package together. I'd sold some action to some of my friends and went out to play some events. And they weren't all just WSOP events. There was Venetian and Planet Hollywood, all over town, just tournaments. So there was tournaments all over, but I had one tournament circled on my WSOP calendar, and it was the 6 Max event. That's what I played, a lot of short-handed games online. It was my favorite style. So that was like the culmination of the whole trip, like an 8-day trip. Had all these tournaments planned before, and then the trip was going to end with this 1500. Well, the trip was just going horrific. Every tournament I played, I was getting cooler. I was just getting beat up. I couldn't win a cash session. Everything was going bad. And by the time I got to the 6 Max tournament, I was pretty demoralized. First trip out there, questioning yourself, do you belong? Maybe you're not as good as you thought you were. And I knew I wasn't like, the upper echelon player, but just everything, just as bad as it could go, was going. So by the time we get to the day of the 6 Max 1500, I don't even know if I want to play anymore. It's just everything was going so bad that I thought I was just throwing money away. Wake up that morning, go play a cash game, put in $200, and it immediately starts going down. I think I buy in for another $200-$300, and then just go on a massive heater. And I think within like 45 minutes, I went from like $140 to like $2,500 or something, and built my confidence back a little bit. So go eat breakfast, get into the tournament, and the first day is it's just a grind. And I'm playing with some pretty good players. I can't remember the guy's name. He was a bracelet winner. Jennifer Shahadi, that is a grandmaster, a chess player, was to my right. And then as the day went on, I was at pretty much that table the whole day. And then as we get closer to the money, I get moved to this table, and I'm not real familiar with all the different poker players. I don't watch a lot on TV, especially at that time, and sit at this table. And my buddy Ben calls me over, and he's like, "Dude, you got a terrible draw. I've got Carrie Katz to my right, who is one of the top 15 poker tournament earners of all time, on Hendon Mob. And then 2 to my left is Justin Bonomo, who at one point was number 1 in the world. I think he just got knocked off that perch this WSOP. And we're playing 5-handed, and I'm short stacked, right? I'm just battling, just trying to get my spots where I can. And we get to the bubble. I think it paid 162 players, and I've got like 9,000 chips, 5-handed, playing with 2 of the better players in the world, and get fortunate and double up on the bubble. Like, we literally had to wait after I went all in to make sure, because we were hand for hand, which means all the poker tables play the hand to see who drops. I end up doubling up. Start day 2, I am 116th out of like 130 players that have made it to day 2. I have 18,500 chips or something. And immediately, the first round, I lose half my chips. I have like 9,000 chips. And just to put that in perspective, only 3 people that started day 2 started with less than 9,000. So I was literally at the bottom of the pile. And then over the next, like, I don't even remember how much time it was. I went from that stack, probably one of the last guys in the tournament, maybe been the smallest stack at that point, and was third in chips like an hour, maybe hour and 15 minutes later. Just went on a mad rush. One of the coolest experiences ever. Tournament progresses, and, you know, real fun experience. I get to play again with another top 15 player in David Peters. Get fortunate that he jams into my aces, knock him out, and the steam starts getting to go. And I'm living the high life, right? My phone is, the notifications are going crazy. My boy John the Mexican on 98.9 The Bear was talking about it on the radio, so I had people that were hearing about it on there and texting me and messaging me. It was just a really cool experience. First time I ever played in a WSOP event, and here I am, top 3 stack on day 2 with, you know, probably at that point 75 players left or whatever, and just continues to go well. We're down to, like, you know, less than 18 players. We're 3 tables, and I had lost some hands to Daniel Strelitz, hell of a player, and I was short stacked again. The guy to my right opens, I think I have like ace 7 or something, and I rejam. Everybody folds. I got a bunch of friends with me. They're watching, and they're cheering every time I win a hand. About a round later, same scenario. He's under the gun. He raises. I look down. I have ace king of spades. Remember that one clearly. So I rejam again. Everybody folds, and my rail cheering, hooping and hollering. And he makes some remark showing his frustration about me jamming on him 2 times in a row when he opened from under the gun. And I knew right then that if I got in that scenario again, I could get him to pay me off. So we go on break, and I'm talking with Nate Geisey, who at that time in our group was the one that had the biggest cash. He had won 90 some K in a HPT event. He won an HPT event against another good player, Dash Dudley, that I've been fortunate enough to play with. And we're talking, and I'm like, dude, I know I've got this guy right where I want him. He's so frustrated. And if I get in that situation again, now I have enough chips that I don't have to rejam. But I know that if I get a top 3 hand, I basically tell him if I get queens or better, I can jam. And if he has a mid pair or better, he's probably putting it in, because we're playing 5-handed. And if that happens, I'm going to be able to get him to call me off light, and we're back in this thing, right? So I shit you not, it's maybe the 3rd hand after we get back from break. He's under the gun. I look down after he raises and see queens. Literally the cutoff I said. So I jammed 200. I think I had 255,000 in chips. Put those in there. Lucas, short stack, fun player to play with. On the other side was short stacked. He had like 80,000, I think. He puts it all in. That's a moot point. I'm really working on this guy to my right. And sure enough, he haws, thinks about it, and then he calls with eights. So I'm sitting there with queens versus eights and versus fours, who has a third of my stack. So even if he wins, but I beat the eights, I'm going to come out all right. Now what happened? We get a king 9-9 flop or a king 9, one of the two, and then the 8 of clubs hits on the turn to give him a set. And like I said, everything can go right until it doesn't. And that's kind of like life. You make these decisions, and the best you can do is trust the process on the decisions. I was never going to get away from that hand. So I'm fine. You know, there's arguments against the way that I played it, but with the way that everything had led up to it, like I just felt like I was setting him up, and I got what I wanted. The outcome wasn't what I wanted. So it puts you in a weird spot, especially as a poker player, right? That's my first event. I'm going to win, I think it's like $15,700 in profit. But I'm 14 people away from 450,000, and more than that, a bracelet, which, you know, you can't take the bracelet. The money can go. The bracelet's there for history, right? Unfortunately, that didn't work. Justin Bonomo would win his first bracelet, and it's the weirdest feeling because you're excited. Like, it's my biggest score. It's the best run I've ever had in a tournament that is notorious for being tough. And I was just like, I was crushed. It was a weird feeling. Like, you're really ecstatic. You feel like you accomplished something, but it still wasn't enough. To bring that back to the way life works, it's the same way, right? Like earlier this year, like I'm working. I'm trying to do everything the right way. Doesn't mean it's going to play out that way. Doesn't mean that it's going to work out. A lot of times the stuff you think you want, you get, and you realize that's not what I wanted after all, right? Life's got those ups and downs, and you have to remember that, you know, especially if you're watching this, if you are capable of even watching this, there are so many people that have it worse than you do. And it's when you really start having gratitude for what you do have, you can put this into perspective and realize that no matter how bad it gets, you can build yourself back up. You can make a mistake, and as long as you learn from it and don't make the mistake over and over and over, right? In poker, we call those leaks, and you have to fix those, and that takes being honest with yourself, which, you know, sounds cliche, but if you can't look at what you're doing, whether it's life, your relationships, your business, playing poker, whatever it is, unless you look at yourself and say, I am doing everything I can to do the right thing and take the bias, your personal bias of yourself out of it, that's when you can really start fixing some shit. When you're high, you have to remember that there's always something that wants to knock you off your path. You know, in poker, it could be just getting coolered, or it could just be you making a bad play. In life, it could be everything's going right, and then you have car troubles. You have to kind of remember, and it's hard to do, and when stuff stacks up, no matter what mentality you've got, it can be tough to kind of break out of that mindset, but you have to remember that it's not the end of the world. Nothing is worse than what you make it. Now, obviously, there's the extreme cases, you know, illness, all that stuff that you can't control. You know, a tornado comes through, you can't control that. But for the most part, our decisions are what create the outcomes that we have. And when I look at poker and I look at life, when you make a decision in a poker hand, whether it's the right or wrong decision, it is going to influence the outcome of that specific hand. And the same can be said for every scenario that you are in life. If you let everything tear you down, you're never going to come back up, right? If I could have, there's multiple ways that you'll see people act in poker tournaments, right? And when I doubled up on the bubble and we got into the money, we played a little bit longer. I think we lost like 30 more players. And I could have been satisfied with, okay, I doubled up, I got into the money, made some money. Now I can dump it off. And nobody's going to say anything, right? I battled through, got through short stacked on the bubble, all good. That wasn't my thought. No matter how big of a disadvantage I was at because of the skill gap, because of, playing with Justin Bonomo, Kerry Katz, there was a bunch of other players that were still, Jonathan Little was in there, multiple other bracelet winners and good players. I was not the 15th best player in that tournament. There were plenty of players in that tournament that were better than me, just not in that tournament. Instead of being satisfied when you get that win, you got to multiply it, right? So come back the next day. When I lose half that stack, a lot of players in that moment would be done. Right? Okay, I'm chalked. 9,000. There was even people at the poker table like, why did you fold and leave yourself with half your stack? And I've always lived by the rule. If I know I'm losing, like, I'm not going to put in the rest of that money. And not a popular opinion, but I was for sure that I was out if I did that. I wouldn't have been able to go on that run if I would have gave up in that moment. Again, life's obviously more serious than a poker tournament, but if you can frame everything in that way, you'll react to stuff different. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, right? I let everything get to me earlier this year and acted ways that I don't act, and which was an eye-opener that I needed to work on myself more. I was now encountering bigger issues than I'd ever encountered before, and I was resetting to the woe is me. Why is everything going wrong for me? What did I do? I didn't do anything to anybody, blah, 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 blah. All the bullshit that you tell yourself until you step back and actually reevaluate it, right? In poker, I got to go back, reevaluate hands. Did I really make the right decision in this moment? And if you're not honest with yourself, you can't figure it out. I really think poker has taught me a lot of lessons about the ups and downs, not going on tilt when stuff goes bad, not counting your eggs before they hatch when stuff's going well, because it can shift on a dime, and life is a lot like that. As soon as you think it's good, you get knocked down a peg. When you think it's the worst, some of the coolest stuff can happen. So I get a lot of questions from people that have no idea about poker, have no idea about how I even, got to do some of the stuff in poker that I got to do. Very, very fortunate. Again, I'm not an amazing player. I did not put in the amount of work that it takes to get to the next level. And I'm sure I'll tell some more stories about conversations and stuff that I've had with players that have got over that pinnacle. I was fortunate enough to actually get to know David Peters a little bit through Derek and Nate Geisey, who were friends of his. And my first poker mentor I met at the first live poker tournament that I played in is now close to $5 million in cashes, Andrew Moreno. His wife is Christy Arnett, that worked for Card Player and Poker News. Watching them go off and do stuff and become great. They put in the effort to get to that point that I didn't put in. The effort that I'm trying to put into the business now. So it whenever I think about different poker stories, it reminds me, it puts life into perspective. reminds me not to get too down or too excited on the ups. Let stuff come as it is. Like you're gonna run bad sometimes. Shit's gonna happen. Sometimes it's gonna be horrible shit, and it's gonna suck. Other times, really cool stuff's gonna happen. You just got to put yourself in that position, make the right decisions to put yourself in that position. So, as I go through this process, I'm sure I will connect these two dots a lot more. Especially with some of the people that I've been fortunate enough to meet in poker that have helped me elevate my game in life, not necessarily poker, but the game of life and the game of business. I want to share some of those stories. I got a lot of other poker stories that I'm sure I'll share, and it'll be a good way to fill in on days when I don't have a bunch of stuff to talk about. But I really just wanted to talk about how relatable the connections are with the ways that a poker tournament works, just poker life in general, the parallels of the ups and downs and the roller coaster ride that you go on. The ride's not over yet, and I don't want to quit before the ride's over. And if I can inspire one person to just keep going and push through the really bad parts, that's a win for me. But if you're new here and you want to see what this is all about, I talk a little bit about it in the first video. I'll make sure to put that up on the screen. Again, I'll get better at this solo stuff. I'm not the best. I said I wasn't going to edit much yesterday. And then I heard how many times I say, and I say it over and over and over. So hopefully we'll get better at that, get better at the eye contact.